Alright, so I got my hands on this E2 silver, and after cleaning it out and getting a new HEPA filter and such for it, I figured I would measure this too. Now, this one runs at a lower wattage than VacLab's sample, and I think this is just speculation at this point, but I hit the wattage thing on my kilowatt meter twice. And there's this setting down here below watts that says VA. And apparently what VA stands for is apparent power. Now, I still really don't understand what apparent power is, but it's supposed to be equal to a watt, or at least around there. And out of curiosity, I ran my little Auric Buster B canister and checked both its wattage and apparent power, and there was only about I think it was about a 12 or 14 watt difference between the two of them. And, well, it's like when I run a rainbow on apparent power, then I get around the 1200 something mark. So I'm kind of wondering if the meter that VacLab is using is actually displaying apparent power instead of, wattage. I mean, that's all I can think of to explain that, because we've now had two samples, both my E2 black and this E2 silver, which do not run at such a high RPM. And checking the serial number and confirming this with RainVac, we are running the third version of the motor. So I don't know. It's all I can really come up with to explain that. So let's take the wattage, and I'm going to show the apparent power too, because maybe that will enlighten us a little bit. So we'll start this up. This is wattage. Now we'll switch to, that was voltage. Switch to wattage. And now we'll switch to apparent power. Wattage, apparent power. So I don't know. It's just kind of a thought, because I mean, when I run it on apparent power, we get readings that are somewhat similar to what VacLab's gotten on his. So I mean, I'm just putting it out there as a possibility, because I don't know if that's the case. I don't know how his meter works. But, before I get to the actual testing, I'm just going to insert a little clip here. I always thought that the separator of the rainbow was responsible for a lot of the airflow loss on them. But out of curiosity, I ran this machine with no water, I should add. I ran it without the separator, and while we did find a slight increase, we did not find a major increase. So, I might be wrong about that. Or at least, I should say I was wrong about that. I mean, clearly it affects it, just not as much as I thought. And in looking at the separator, but yeah, if we look at the shape of the separator, and it does rotate, I believe it rotates this way. So, another collector and I were discussing this, and he thought this kind of acted, the little ridges here almost kind of acted like a scoop, but I thought the pitch of these wasn't quite enough to act that way. But I think he's right, because if it were to spin in the other direction, I think it would blow out a lot more air. But I think, spinning the way it does, it kind of acts to negate itself. So it's like, despite it being spinning and therefore it should be throwing things outwards, I think having this slight pitch to the blades of the separator actually kind of negates its ability to fling the air back out. Of course, water is much denser, so it's a different story with water. But I think that would be an interesting thing to test. I know he said he tried rotating it in both directions, putting this on the end of a shaft on his drill, I think it was. And he said, there was more disturbance of I think he used some sort of smoke. There was more disturbance to the smoke when he spun it in this direction, but less when he spun it in this direction. So, it, might not be quite as restrictive as I've always thought it was. So that's kind of neat that they have engineered that into it. But of course, when you've been around for so long, producing water machines, water filtration vacuums for so long, it makes sense that you would come up with innovations to make your machines better. Alright, so now we'll cut my yakking and get on to the actual testing. So we got the airflow meter set up. Seems to be all we'll get. Then we'll take our water lift. So it turns out I didn't have the hose fully inserted. I could hear a lot of leaking, so I got that fixed. So we're going to do this again. Okay. I'll just call that where it is. Pop that off. We'll take our water lift. I didn't feel like having to unplug all this and start all over. So, plugged it in. It's weird that we lost so much in this wand. It's a pretty straightforward path. Huh. Then we'll do the water lift. Strange. Oh. Looks like we have a slight bend back here, so we're definitely not getting what we should. Let's try this. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Because, yeah, the wand is slightly bent. I've never even noticed. Huh. Alright, now for some nozzle flow and suction tests. First with the nozzle off, of course, and then we'll switch it on. Actually, let's try the suction test just to make sure we're sealed. Well, no, not really. Leaking right around here for sure. Just a little bit around this. Some around this. I can feel a little bit right there too, so I mean, it's another case of the nozzle is not well sealed. I mean, that must have kind of helped it out a little. Seems we won't climb any higher. I'll try that again. Nope. Well, it would seem I wasn't recording any of that. I just tried this with the brush roll on. I got a maximum of 1673, but we will redo that, I guess, since I wasn't recording, so... Okay, well... I'm still going to use 1673 as my highest number for the nozzle on, because I have gotten that result. But, and I mean, you know, a difference of 20 isn't really going to amount to too much. Alright, and we're going to use this on its medium pile setting, because that's what seems to work best on this. So, we'll boot it up. Yep, center belt path plus low airflow, line of shame. Yeah, it's a little bit murky. Oats tend to be a little bit, well, they seem to give off a fair amount of dust. And we got a little bit of pet fur in there. But, yeah, just figured I would get this done so we have a more direct comparison and hopefully an explanation for the difference in wattage between VacLab and myself. But, you know, like I said, it's speculative at this point.